Good morning and welcome to our meeting, March the 5th here today. And I will call the meeting to order and start with our roll call. Asphodel Norwood, Mayor Wilford.
Here.
Online, Deputy Mayor Burt.
Here.
Kevin Monaghan online is Mayor Graham.
Present.
Our Deputy Mayor has sent regrets. Duro Dummer, we have Mayor Watson and Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Present.
Havelock Belmont Methuen, Mayor Martin.
Present.
And Deputy Mayor Webb.
Present.
Excuse me, North Kawartha, Mayor Amiot.
Good morning.
And Deputy Mayor Whalen, top of the morning to you, Jim.
Thank you very much. The Irish are here today.
Autonomy South Monaghan, Mayor Taylor.
Morning to you.
And myself, Deputy Mayor Clark. At Selwyn, we have the Deputy Warden and Mayor Senes. Good morning. And Deputy Mayor Black.
Top of the morning to you.
And Trent Lakes, we have Mayor Lemshead.
Good morning.
And Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Present.
Thank you. We'll start with our land acknowledgement.
With deep respect, we acknowledge the lands and interconnected waterways that bind us together, the foundation for all life. These lands serve as a keeper of history and stories and are a source of inspiration. In recognizing this, we embrace that all living things possess an important energy and purpose. We extend the utmost gratitude to the original peoples who have been caretakers of these lands and waters of this region from time immemorial, and to this day who continue this commitment. Peterborough County's dedication to reconciliation remains steadfast. In this spirit, we are committed to nurturing meaningful partnerships and connections that contribute to an environment of prosperity and well-being for all generations to come. This acknowledgement is made on the Treaty 20 land and the territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, and within the traditional lands of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nations. Further, our gratitude is extended to the nations of Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island.
Thank you. We will now take a moment of silence in memory of Bob Allen, a Duro Township Councillor and County Councillor in 1973 to 1976 and 1979 to 1984, and County Warden in 1983, who passed away February 19th of this year. We extend our deepest condolences to his family, friends, colleagues, and all mourning his loss. We'll now take a moment. Thank you. I'd just like to first of all announce we all are celebrating here in the council chambers the raising of the Irish flag today to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the immigration. 2024 peoples came to Upper Canada 200 years ago, and today we will be raising the flag at the county, and consequently we have many scarves and a lot of us wearing green here. So that is why we have not lost track that it is the 5th of March, not the 17th. So thank you. So I'll have to ask for an adoption of our agenda, please. And I see Councillor Martin and Councillor Amiot, all in favor. Thank you. Does any councillor have the disclosure of pecuniary interest on any agenda item? And if so, please declare. And I see none. We have our minutes from February the 19th. Could I have a mover for those? And I see Councillor Watson and Deputy Mayor Senes. All in favor? Thank you. Now I am going to start our public meeting under the Planning Act, and I would like a mover and a seconder to call that to order. Councillor Webb and Councillor Nelson, all in favor? Thank you. And I will ask Ian to, and he's going to be joined by Keziah from our planning department, so our director and both our managers. So please take the podium.
Thank you, Warden, and good morning, members of council. I'll just start with a few opening remarks before Keziah proceeds with a PowerPoint presentation. So this is a public meeting that we're going to deal with some red line revisions as proposed to the county official plan. Just as a bit of background, council will recall that we went through an extensive process to develop a new county official plan, which was adopted in June of 2022. That was a lengthy process, and the reason for the length of that process was there was ongoing revisions to planning legislation, as many of you are aware, and it seemed oftentimes we were taking one step forward and two steps back, having to rejig the process, having to rejig policy. So shortly after the plan was adopted by a county council and sent to the province again rejigged some legislation and came forward with some draft legislation, which is now in full force and effect, and that is the new provincial planning statement. That document essentially replaced the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, which is applicable, had been applicable to the County of Peterborough, quite restrictive planning legislation. It also replaced the provincial policy statement, which had been in place. So this new document, this new legislation that's in place is a little more lenient. And so the proposal that we brought forward to council last December and was supported by council was to move forward with a red line revision to the adopted plan that still sits before the province for approval, and to bring the plan in line with the new provincial planning statement. So provide a little more flexibility in the policies. So as directed by council, we did move forward with public consultation. This is part of that process. But we did make the red line revised plan available to the public on our dedicated website. We did advertise in the paper. We pushed it out in social media. We have circulated to agencies and First Nations. There was anyone who had signed up to be notified on our official plan website to get email blasts were notified that we were undertaking this process. We did have an open house last week, a virtual open house that was attended by people, and we again went through, provided a presentation and had an open discussion. So this morning, you're going to see a presentation from Keziah. We're open to public comments. No decisions are going to be made today, and I'd just like to reinforce that. We're not asking for any decision of council today. We will be bringing a report back to a future council meeting where we look at the comments that have been received, and we'll speak to those comments and how they can or cannot be addressed with respect to the current legislation. So with that, I'll turn it over to Keziah to move forward with the presentation.
Thanks for that, Ian, and through you, Warden. So welcome, everybody. As Ian said, my name is Keziah Holden, and I'm the General Manager at the County of Peterborough, and I know there's a number of people joining us online as well, so welcome to those people. Could I have the next slide, please? So Ian did give a pretty quick run over of how we got here, but as a reminder, back in June of 2022, County Council adopted the new official plan, and it is the official plan for 7 out of our 8 municipalities. So Cavan Monaghan is the only exception to that. And the adopted official plan served as both the municipal comprehensive review and the growth plan conformity exercise, which was required to be completed by July 1st of 2022. Shortly after the adopted OP was received by the province, the Minister of Municipal Affairs suspended the timeline for making a decision, and that has left the county and townships in a holding pattern. As Ian said, we are still waiting for that decision to this day. In 2023, a draft of the new provincial planning statement was released for public review and comment. And the new PPS, as Ian said, was to replace both the in effect growth plan and provincial policy statement. And that effect had or that had the effect of significantly changing the policy environment under which the official plan was originally adopted. In that same year, the county OP was posted to the Environmental Registry of Ontario for public review and comment, and the county chose to submit comments on the ERO to highlight the change in legislation and the change it would have, or the impact it would have on the new official plan if it was approved in the current form. And those comments were made through county council, and council also requested that the minister defer a decision until the new PPS was in place, just to avoid a situation where the new OP is approved and then it was immediately out of date with the in effect legislation. In early 2024, and at the direction of county council, members of the technical advisory committee reconvened. We began working on modifications that would implement the draft PPS. We recognized at that time that the PPS may change from its draft form to its final version. But it was recognized that that work was going to need to be undertaken anyway. So any work that was done in the meantime, whether it was approved either by the minister through modification or as an official plan amendment at a later time, that work needed to be done regardless. So it wasn't seen as any kind of lost work. With the work nearing completion on the modification, the Minister of Municipal Affairs then requested that the county repeal its adoption of the new official plan. And that was followed shortly thereafter with the release of the new PPS, which came into effect October 20th, 2024, with very few changes from its original draft that was released in 2023. The county didn't feel that repealing the adoption of the new OP was providing a timely resolution to an outstanding decision. And so a meeting was arranged with Minister Calandra to discuss the issue. And county staff, together with the warden and deputy warden, met with the minister and ministry staff in late October of 2024, wherein the minister agreed to modify the OP to be consistent with the PPS subject to several criteria. In December 2024, council directed that staff proceed with this public consultation process. And then in early 2025, we officially began that process. Next slide, please, Marissa. So as Ian mentioned, we have gone through a consultation process. It officially began on January 15th with the public release of the Red Line revised official plan. It was advertised in the local newspaper, on our website, through our social media accounts. We also sent email notification to everyone as required under the Planning Act, including First Nations communities. We also utilize our contact list from the original development of the new official plan. And that list contains over 100 contacts. And then we sent notification to our official plan webpage subscribers. And there are just over 170 individuals on that list. We did host a public open house last week. And it was fairly well attended. I believe we had about 35 people registered for that event. And all of this consultation was done in accordance with the consultation process we outlined in our report in December. Next. So the purpose of this exercise is to implement the new provincial planning statement, which replaced both the provincial policy statement and the growth plan. Decisions on all planning matters must be consistent with the new PPS. And the adopted official plan was heavily influenced by the growth plan and is now out of date with the in effect legislation. So as Ian said, this exercise is to correct that. Next slide. So given the purpose of the proposed revisions, the modifications to the new OP have been quite scoped, and we're only looking at changes where necessary to bring the OP into alignment with the new PPS. So I talked earlier about our meeting with Minister Calandra, and he was very clear about the modifications process. There had to be transparency in the process. So there had to be consultation at the county level. There had to be First Nations consultation undertaken, and there were to be no mapping or schedule changes. He would only consider textual policy changes that reflect the new PPS. So before I go into some of the key changes, some of the minor revisions that you will see throughout the official plan is that references throughout the policy or throughout the document to the growth plan and the provincial policy statement have been replaced with the provincial planning statement, just so that it updates or so it reflects the correct piece of legislation. Specific terms have been updated throughout the document to match the language of the PPS. So for example, you will notice throughout the document, there's references to key hydrologic features or key natural heritage features, and that has been updated to just say natural heritage feature. We've also made small modifications to reflect other legislation changes that have happened since 2022. An example of that is Bill 185, which made changes to the ability for mandatory pre-consultation bylaws to be passed. Excuse me. So language has been updated in the revisions to reflect that change. There's also recognition of changes in service delivery from one agency to another. And an example of that is the transfer of septic inspection services from Peterborough Public Health to local municipalities. We're also, go back. Thank you. We're also proposing to carry forward official plan amendments that have been approved in the interim period from 2025 or 2022 until today. Those amendments have gone through a public process. They've been adopted and approved and are in force and effect today. So we felt it was appropriate to carry those approvals forward. So these are some of the key changes that have been made through the revision process. So in the adopted official plan, the county as an upper tier municipality was required to delineate settlement area boundaries and built boundaries within service settlement areas. And the new PPS no longer contains those requirements. So our settlement area policies are being updated to remove some of the growth plan terminology, such as references to the built boundary. And we are also proposing to delete a policy section and related schedule, which delineates settlement area boundaries for the village of Millbrook, because the township of Cabamonic can do that through their own official plan. There's also changes being made that would allow for the expansion of a settlement area or the establishment of a new settlement area, subject to certain criteria. This was previously not permitted by the growth plan. And so the official plan that was adopted doesn't currently allow for it. The PPS permits those expansions and establishment of new settlement areas and allows those to take place outside of a municipal comprehensive review. Our adopted official plan currently does not allow for the removal of land from an employment area unless it's through a municipal comprehensive review. And the new PPS allows the removal of lands from an area of employment without the need for a municipal review, provided certain criteria can be met. And the revisions to the employment policies reflect those changes. And the last two items on this list have to do with natural heritage features and the natural heritage system. So the growth plan was quite restrictive when it came to development, which does include lot creation within key hydrologic features and within a 30-meter protection zone around those features. All development, including lot creation, was prohibited in those areas. So for a reference, a key hydrologic feature as defined by the growth plan included pretty well any source of water. So that includes wetlands, permanent and intermittent streams, ponds, all of those kinds of things. So this was the policy environment under which the adopted official plan was created and adhered to. The new PPS only prohibits development in certain provincially significant natural heritage features. And one of the most prominent ones that we have in the county are provincially significant wetlands. And the new PPS does not implement or require a 30-meter vegetation protection zone. So that's a significant change in direction from what was originally adopted to what is in effect now. So we've proposed revisions which are consistent with the new PPS, and we provide direction to certain features that the PPS does not speak to. So these policy changes as written would necessitate mapping changes. Given that the minister has said that he will not entertain mapping changes, we haven't gone through the exercise of actually updating the land use schedules to show those mapping changes. And in fact, we anticipate that the minister will not implement those mapping changes. But we wanted to just be forthcoming about what our intent was. We intend to, if the minister does not implement the mapping changes, we would have to go through an official plan amendment process at some point in the future to implement that change. The revised version of the new official plan proposes a more feature-dependent policy environment, so it would only be provincially significant wetlands that prohibited development outright. That's consistent with the PPS, with other features being protected but permissive of development. It must be demonstrated that there's a sufficient building envelope outside of the feature and its buffer to accommodate the development and its services. So we've tried to protect the feature while allowing development to happen. Lot creation can go through the feature, but the actual physical construction on a site must be located outside of the feature and its buffer. So although that's not specifically required by the PPS, the Technical Advisory Committee felt it was a more balanced approach that is in keeping with the overall direction of the PPS to protect natural features and their ecological functions. And lastly, in the original development of the new official plan, the growth plan required that the provincial natural heritage system be used, and the new PPS still requires a natural heritage system to be identified in ecoregions 6E and 7E, but there's no longer a requirement to use the provincial natural heritage system. So what we've proposed instead is to utilize the Kawarthas naturally connected preferred scenario as our natural heritage system. And some members of council may recall that we originally proposed to use that mapping during the original development of the official plan, but ultimately wasn't accepted by the province at that time. And the Kawarthas naturally connected mapping was developed locally and involved numerous stakeholders, including the county. And the whole purpose of that exercise was to develop a natural heritage system that would ultimately be implemented in local official plans. And so that's what we're proposing to do. We are proposing to replace the adopted natural heritage system with the KNC natural heritage system. And then there's some small policy changes associated with that as well, that would remove some of the very specific growth plan requirements that were included at the time. So as I said before, that is a mapping change. And so we don't anticipate that the minister will be amenable to implementing it. But for complete transparency, we've provided that information up front with the understanding that we may have to come back at a later date to make that change. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we do anticipate the need to undertake an official plan amendment soon after the approval of the new official plan to pick up any loose ends that the minister may not approve. And those include mapping and text changes to implement the provincially significant wetland and environmentally sensitive area designations, the natural heritage system replacement, any errors or omissions that we notice once the official plan is in regular use every day, and any requested changes that the townships may want to make. We have no anticipated timeline for that amendment. It really depends on when the decision is made by the minister and what that decision will look like. But any future amendment will have to follow Planning Act requirements. So there would be a full public process associated with that at that time. So we have received some written comments throughout the consultation process. And some of them are up there. They're not all covered on this slide because some were received after I created this presentation. So there's been a comment made that more specific language or clarification could be added to reflect Conservation Authority regulations, which would provide some direction. With respect to the proposed natural heritage designations, it was suggested that clarification be provided for some permitted uses. So whether it was a new use versus an existing use, and some concern for potential gaps to be created when looking at the proposed policy and mapping. There's been a request to have the 30-meter water setback policies reopened to create more flexibility. We received a request to add language to the Crown Lands and Provincial Parks designation to recognize the ability of municipalities to regulate in-water development through zoning. And lastly, on that particular slide, there's been a request to remove the requirement for new plans of subdivision in the waterfront residential designation to obtain access from a municipal road. Some of the comments that we've received that aren't shown on that slide, and I'm just going to mention them briefly. There's been an objection to the use of the Kawarthas naturally connected mapping and concerns that the website is down, so the Kawarthas naturally website is inaccessible at this point in time. The submission also included a note that there has been no RFP process for obtaining and using that mapping, and included an objection to the agricultural mapping. We've also received a request to update the official plan to permit ground-mounted solar generation facilities on agricultural lands where those facilities already exist. Ideally, the request would see such lands designated rural to allow for the long-term continued use of those facilities. We've also received correspondence from the Township of Douro Dummer in reiterating their comments from 2022. And there's been a comment, and I understand it was circulated to all of council, that in the on-farm diversified uses section, there is a permission to allow renewable energy facilities and energy storage facilities on agricultural lands, and the request has been made to remove that permission. And in that particular circumstance specifically, it is a definition in the PPS that those have to be permitted, so we can't contradict the PPS, but we would address that in a future report to council. Next slide. So going forward, our next step is to bring a report back to County Council, which would summarize this process and any other comments that we've received along the way. And it would include further recommended modifications based on these comments. With council support, we'd then be in a position to forward the redline revised official plan together with the report and recommendations to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. We anticipate that the new official plan would be posted on the environmental registry again for public review and comment. And then the last step and our ultimate goal is the approval of the new official plan by the Minister of Municipal Affairs. And that's all I have for today. I just would note that if there's anybody here or online that wants to receive a notice of decision, our intention, once we receive a decision from the minister, is to post it on our website and just let everybody who's been involved in the process to date know that there is an official plan in effect.
All right, thank you, Keziah. And as our director, Ian Mudd, has said, no decision today. This is a public meeting. I'll look for any questions around the council chamber and then entertain the delegations. So Deputy Warden Senes.
Thank you very much. Through you, Warden. At the meeting with the minister, he requested that we have full consultation with the First Nations. Has that requirement been fulfilled?
In our opinion, yes. The ministry did provide, through you, Warden. The ministry did provide us with a list of First Nations contacts. So we have circulated not only the chiefs, which is required under the Planning Act, but all those contacts as well. And that's where it's been left. We haven't heard any objections to the revisions to date.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I have Councillor Graham online and Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, and through you, Warden. Because I had a question with regards to some of the policies with regards to affordable housing. In the new PPS, there's references to requiring municipalities to work with housing service managers to make sure there's alignment with some of the zoning policies. But there's also a comment about requiring municipalities to establish local targets for affordable housing based on the new affordable housing definition. I'm a bit confused because I understand what the legislation is pursuing, and I think it's great, but it doesn't really explain, at least as far as I can see, how a municipality is supposed to be enabled to effectively create housing. If, to use one of the examples, they talk about 10% lower than the previous sales in the community. Like, the municipalities don't have any ability to manifest or affect the sale price of the inventory of housing that comes in their portfolio. So I'm curious if maybe there's more tea leaves somewhere that's just been missing, but I'm curious to see, is there a conversation that we're working with the housing service manager on to establish these targets, similar to the original OP, where the county receives an allotment based on population, et cetera, and then that's distributed throughout the municipalities? Or like, how is that going to be managed when we have, a shared service arrangement with Peterborough Housing Corp to sort of work with us on this? And it's just a bit confusing as to, is the municipality of each of our 8 municipalities going to be responsible for that target and work through the county with PHC to address some of it, but then there's going to be other numbers left to municipalities themselves? And I'm just looking for some guidance here.
Yeah, that's a good question. Through you, Warden. So we didn't make any changes to the affordable housing policies as such, because we felt they already met the intent of the PPS. But the new official plan provides some enabling policies, and we need to explore the option of inviting our affordable housing service provider to our pre-consultation meetings. That may be the best way to get them involved in the process, because as you say, we can't mandate that a developer create affordable housing. I believe in the new official plan, there is a policy section that references the housing and homelessness plan that was released at the time. Included some of those affordable housing targets. So that language is in the official plan. It's just a matter of process in terms of making those connections.
Yeah, follow up if I can, Warden.
Yes, certainly.
So just that's what I was wondering, because I so appreciate that answer. And I understand it's a bit confusing and there's still some decision making to be done. I guess I was wondering if there is going to, one of the benefits I thought of that housing and homelessness plan was that you actually have a data point or a number that you're working towards pursuing. And there's language that I was referring to in some of the new PPS about establishing a target. I think of a target as a number. And I think that would be very helpful, being the county rep on the Peterborough Housing Corp board. If each municipality is going to have a target, it's something that can be incorporated into the Peterborough Housing Corp plan to say, well, where can we align with each of these municipalities? Because there's several municipalities throughout the county that have 0 Peterborough housing beds in their municipal boundaries. So I think it's important that if there is a number, or how we get to a number, that, there's a clear understanding of who's responsible for how much of their local number, or how we're going to work together to sort of actually pursue that diversity of housing, because municipalities don't have a lot of teeth or a lot of leverage to push back and try to create smaller footprint or more, affordable housing units in these plans of subdivision, unless there's some, like I said, tools that the county's been given in this new document that it just doesn't seem quite clear what that might be.
Yeah, through you, Warden. I agree with your comments. I think that there needs to be some clear direction. And I think sometimes with the community plans that are developed, there is a little bit of a disconnect between planning policy and those community plans. So if it's going through the process of being updated again, we'd be happy to entertain certainly making changes to the OP at a future date to better implement and give the municipality the teeth it needs.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Graham, because I know sitting on Peterborough Housing Corp, certainly the county paying 54.9% of social housing, and the number of housing we have in the municipalities has always been something that anyone that we have sitting on that board has tried to position the county in certainly a more significant role in that. So thank you for all the advocacy that you do on that, Councillor Whalen, and then Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Warden. I won't take you long to answer this one, I don't think, because what we've heard, 30-meter water setback, reopen these policies and create flexibility. I've had this brought up a few times from residents. Is there any flexibility?
So through your Warden, we haven't proposed any changes to that section because that section already conforms to the provincial policy or planning statement. So we haven't proposed any additional changes over what's already in the adopted official plan.
What I thought. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Thank you. Through you, Ms. Holden, because I thank you for confirming in your remarks that you did receive the comments from our municipality that we submitted just following our February 18th, 2025 meeting. Those comments were actually resubmitting comments that were made by the previous council in February of 2022.
That's correct.
March of 2022. And I just would look to you for confirmation that those were received and those comments were subsequently forwarded to the province at that time.
Yep, through your Warden. So we have received them. We haven't forwarded them to the province yet, but when it comes forward to county council, they'll be part of that report. And then when the whole package is shipped off to the ministry, then it will form part of that package as well.
Thank you. And just to clarify, the comments in 2022, can you confirm that they were received in 2022 and subsequently forwarded?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I see that Douro Dummer is well represented. We have a councillor also from Douro Dummer, Councillor Watts here as well in the gallery. And Councillor Johnson, yes, as well. So thank you both for attending. All right. So Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Warden Clark. Because in the red line version of the OP, there's language that says lands can be removed from an employment area subject to meeting certain criteria. Are you able to explain briefly what that certain criteria is?
Through your Warden, I don't have that criteria in front of me, but it's not difficult criteria, I guess. You have to demonstrate that the that the removal of the employment area of employment is not going to impact the municipality's overall need for the lands that are needed. You have to demonstrate that the proposed use, so whatever is being proposed in the employment area's place, is not going to further constrain or restrict the remaining employment lands. There has to be servicing and infrastructure available for the proposed use and for the remaining employment lands. And I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I think there might be one more, but yeah.
That's fine, but that language really has always been in there. There's not much change to that.
Through you, yeah, the criteria haven't changed that much, but it's just no longer required to go through a municipal comprehensive review in order to make those changes. So that is the significant part of the change.
Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Warden Clark. Thanks for your presentation, Keziah. One question I have, and I get hit with this a lot throughout our municipality, is the agricultural mapping. And I do know that the province is updating that mapping. So is some of the reason why the minister my question is some of the reasons why the minister is not wanting to even look at that mapping is because that work is not done by the province yet, and that will come at a later date. Is that kind of what the reason is for this mapping not being up to date yet?
Yep. So through you, Warden, I didn't get the impression that the minister was not willing to entertain mapping changes for agricultural mapping. It actually seemed to be more focused on settlement areas. So there was concern, specific questions from the ministry about whether any of our settlement area boundaries were changing. There was really no talk about the agricultural systems mapping. So I can't definitively answer your question. I can just say that at the time, it seemed to be more focused on settlement areas rather than agricultural areas.
Just a follow up to that, if I might, Warden Clark. From talks that I have had with people that were actually involved in the mapping, they have not finished that mapping through MAFRA, from my understanding, and they were doing soil testing and a lot of that stuff that the province had taken on. So I assume that work is not actually totally complete yet, if I understand that correct.
Yep, through you. Yeah, like it may not be complete yet, and that's not saying that we can't revisit the agricultural mapping at some point in the future when we have newer updated data. That's certainly an exercise that we could go through.
Thank you very much, Keziah.
Okay, I see no further questions. I'm going to have our clerk Councillor Black, and then I'm going to just before Ron, I'm just going to have our clerk mention.
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone in the gallery know, in case you're unaware, you don't need to record the meeting. It is live streamed on YouTube and you can watch it for up to a year.
Oh, thank you. Okay, very good. Councillor Black.
Thank you, through Warden. Just to follow up to Councillor Whalen's question on the 30-meter setback. There's a lot of property within built-up settlement areas that have sort of natural ponding areas, intermittent wet areas that are often EP'd as well as significant wetlands, and then they're subject to the same 30-meter setback typically. That does impact the ability to develop in some of those properties. And can you just comment on whether Orca and the county supports reducing those setbacks to those intermittent they're really just stormwater managed areas. I know typically they like to leave them in their natural heritage state. But is the county and Orca supportive of reducing those setbacks to make more of that property available for development in our built up areas or settlement areas?
Yeah. Through you, Warden. So the Conservation Authority, their mandate has changed. So they are no longer commenting on natural heritage matters. They're only interested in the natural hazards. And just maybe I could ask a quick clarifying question. Are we talking about stormwater management ponds, like the actual facilities, or more natural features?
Yeah, more natural features that are wet during storm situations, but dry up and don't have a lot of natural features to support, water-based amphibians and so on year round. They're often EP'd the same way as a significant wetland, which restricts the land use further.
Yep. So through you, Warden. So in terms of what the Conservation Authority would comment on, typically they've been asking for a hazard limit assessment or a hazard assessment, and they can't permit new development within a natural hazard. So it would be determined through that study. In terms of reducing a 30-meter buffer, if the environmental impact study could require a lesser buffer, then that would be entertained. Yes.
Thank you.
I see no further questions, so I need a motion, please, that the presentation regarding the proposed revisions to our new county OP be received. So moved by Councillor Lambshead and second by Councillor Burt. All in favor? So moved. Thank you. And now we'll move to delegations. And yes, and we do have just a reminder that delegations need to be registered, and it is a 5-minute maximum for a presentation. And we have Emily Champagne, who is online, and she has registered. So I'll ask you to unmute Emily and go ahead, please.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning. My name is Emily Champagne. I'm here today as a shoreline property owner. There's a few issues I'd like to talk about with regards to the natural heritage system policies and mapping. The first one is why has the county changed the requirement for an environmental impact study in place of the existing natural heritage assessment? This will be expensive, unequitable, overly burdensome, and onerous for landowners and may harm property values. We don't see anywhere that the provincial policy statement that it encourages the completion of an environmental impact study in the way that the red line policies suggest. The second, we're wondering, why are we discussing changes today which were already rejected by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing? We understand her 3 conditions were transparency in the process, including public consultation at the county level, but specifically the public notice issued on February 3rd preceding the open house and this public meeting stated that the county was only considering policy changes to align with the provincial policy statement with no mapping changes. However, the integration of the Kawarthas naturally connected preferred scenario was introduced after this notice was issued in direct conflict with the stated intent. Second, the First Nation consultation regarding the process. Even though letters were sent out, we've not seen any evidence that they have also been made aware of the mapping changes. And the third condition being that no changes to mapping or schedules be made. The county's decision to introduce new mapping at this time directly contradicts the requirement to have no changes to mapping. Our third concern is that the county is allowing a series of non-government organizations and land trust special interest groups to subvert the process. Is the county aware that the Kawarthas naturally connected preferred scenario was developed at least in part by the Kawartha Land Trust, whose stated mission is to acquire lands for permanent conservation? And does the county see that by implementing restrictions on private land development, as well as increased regulatory burden, that they may destroy property values, which would allow the Kawartha Land Trust to acquire private land at lower values? Due to these 3 points, we request that the County of Peterborough should defer all policies and mapping decisions regarding the natural heritage system changes so that proper consultation with affected community members can take place as per the direction received by the minister. Next slide, if you don't mind. If the county decides to proceed with the preferred scenario mapping, there's a number of issues with the mapping that we feel need to be addressed. First, I'll bring your attention to the second picture. The gray and dark gray layers created are the barriers mapping, which are supposed to represent man-made features, but there's many areas on this lake where the satellite imagery actually shows that this is Canadian Shield bedrock. And so there's inaccuracies in the mapping. Second, the white areas on this map show the adjacent KNC selected areas layer definition, which does not cover any natural heritage features itself, only adjacent lands identified as a priority by those who created the mapping. and the methodology used to choose the areas is unclear. One of the examples that we find problematic listed in the priorities was priorities for conservation land acquisitions. We do not feel that this is an appropriate way to choose natural heritage areas. Lastly, the preferred solution layer shown in pink in the top photo. Why are some shoreline areas excluded from the pink area, like cottage areas around the southwest end, while others are not? For instance, some islands are included in the preferred scenario, some are not. And it appears that there's a number of poorly delineated or poorly ground truth areas that appear to arbitrarily penalize some landowners over others. Because of this, we feel that the mapping is inaccurate. How will the county ensure that all information included in the mapping is correct? This needs a more thorough review, and how will the county make sure that the burden does not fall on the landowners themselves? We will be submitting these points as written comments following this meeting, as we would like to request a reply from the county on how each of these would be addressed. And we'd also like to request to be notified of all further decisions or actions on this issue. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Emily, and certainly our planning department has heard those concerns and will be addressing them. So thank you today. I do not have any further delegations that are registered, but is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to speak? All right, I see none, so I just need a motion that the delegation that was heard for the proposed revision be received. So Councillor Black and Councillor Graham, all in favor? Thank you, so moved. So we'll rise now from our public meeting and I need a motion for that. And I see Councillor Armstrong and Councillor Whalen, all in favor? Thank you. That time was 10:16. All right, moving to delegations and presentations. I believe online we have Kelly Steele Stanton, Managing Partner for NLC Corp Management Consulting, and this is our service delivery view on Lang Century Village. There's Kelly.
Hi, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me. And yes, we want to thank Peterborough County for enlisting NLS Corp to provide the service delivery review for Lang Pioneer Village Museum. Next slide, please. This is just our corporation's, we've consolidated our commitment. We've also created an acknowledge and commitment statement specific for Lang Pioneer Village Museum throughout this service delivery. So I'll just read that here, even though we've already had the land commitment at the beginning of this meeting. Lang Pioneer Village Museum respectfully acknowledges that they are located on the traditional and treaty territories of the Mississauga Anishinaabe, specifically the Curve Lake First Nation and Hiawatha First Nation. This land, known as the Noga-Jiwanong, now referred to as Peterborough County, has been home to Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, and we recognize their enduring connection to the land, water, and community. Lang Pioneer Village Museum, now in the future, is committed to fostering continued meaningful relationships with Curve Lake First Nation and the Hiawatha First Nation, their partners. They pledge to honor and uphold the histories, cultures, and contributions of the Mississauga Anishinaabe through collaboration and shared storytelling, including the vital narratives of the Noga-Jiwanong. They aim to ensure that now and in the future that the museum continues to reflect the richness of Indigenous heritage and promote ongoing education and understanding. And the commitment includes actions that continue to support reconciliation, respect treaty rights, and celebrate the diversity of voices that shape our collective history, and that together we dedicate ourselves to building a future founded on mutual respect, equity, and the stewardship of this shared land. Next slide, please. So this is just our agenda today. This is just to go through a bit of the project summary, how we approached it. We want to talk about some opportunities of where Lang Pioneer Village Museum has some opportunities in their current state for revenue diversification, as well as some opportunities for some improved governance in their current state. And then we want to discuss a little bit some strategic planning around transitioning Lang Pioneer Village Museum to a hybrid operating model, much similar to Fanshop Pioneer Village Museum out towards London, Ontario. That all of this has been provided in the longer comprehensive report, and then we can open it up for any Q&A. Next slide, please. So during the service delivery review, this is our project summary. Sorry, just losing my voice there. In the project summary, Peterborough County really recognized the need to optimize their current operations and enhance the financial sustainability for Lang Pioneer Museum. So therefore, they went out to tender, public tender, for a comprehensive service delivery review. Our approach and our review focused on strategies to streamline their operations, increase revenue, and reduce operating costs while aligning with evolving community needs and the passion and the uniqueness, you know, of different market opportunities that Lang could actually embrace. And our findings recommended a forward-looking hybrid strategy that can really sort of better navigate shifting economic conditions that are similar to museums, community museums, whether they're not fully not-for-profit or owned and operated by different municipalities throughout Canada, and ensure long-term sustainability as well as growth. So the objective of the service delivery review was to ensure that there was a continuation of the legacy that Lang Pioneer Village Museum has, as well as maintaining the historical presence, and that it was really key that their First Nation partners were an important priority to support these long-term goals, and that we wanted to make sure that we identified some funding and revenue as well as cost savings to support budget needs and to optimize, you know, the governance structure within the advisory committee. So the scope of work is that we did numerous engagement activities. We conducted a financial analysis. We did a lot of benchmarking. We created funding. We did some funding and grant opportunity analysis and research and provided in the more comprehensive report some additional grants that in the current operating model, Lang Pioneer Museum could actually be eligible for, as well as ones, if they were to shift to a hybrid operating model, some additional funding opportunities that would open up a lot more revenue streams for them just in the granting perspective. And so we also wanted to, when we did all of that, we had a staff meeting, we had a staff survey, we conducted a fresh eyes review. Myself and members of my team were in person in the county. We also made sure that we spoke with different, you know, community. We also did a volunteer survey, and we also did some individual one-on-one stakeholder interviews. So the official launch was in October. The target completion was February of 25th, which we did provide all the final deliverables at the same time we did this type of presentation to the advisory committee. As I said, we completed, you know, 2 surveys in addition to individual stakeholder interviews. And that is where, through all of that analysis, we came up with some common themes that are found in our recommendations. Next slide, please. So we just want to talk a little bit about revenue diversification and the current state. Next slide. And so basically, here are some considerations for some immediate revenue diversification for Lang Pioneer Village Museum. Right now, there is a vacant role that was termed to be a visitor experience coordinator. However, in our analysis, in the current operating model, this instead of replacing a visitor experience coordinator, because that action is actually a part of all staff, all volunteers, to make sure that the visitor experience, you know, is positive, is everything that they have come to expect from Lang Pioneer Museum. And that currently the consideration would be to actually replace that vacancy with a dedicated fundraising and partnerships position. That is where this fundraising and partnerships position could actually work with local community members, as well as really focus on these additional grant opportunities. There is an opportunity when we did our benchmarking with comparable, both in the immediate area as well as in the broader Ontario, as well as with some similar sized municipalities outside of Ontario, is that Lang has an opportunity for a slight admission fee adjustment, and that they still have some ways to optimize their facility space, which could actually attract some more, whether that is smaller corporate meetings or special events like weddings and gatherings like that. We actually also talked a little bit about the retail marketplace. Because the retail marketplace actually in its current state does actually generate some nice additional revenue for Lang. However, there's the opportunity to actually enhance that into a retail marketplace and attract local artisans as well. And again, just to leverage some of those local relationships. Next slide, please. So speaking just a little bit more on the revenue diversification is, as I mentioned about the admission fees, Lang's admission fees are a bit lower than comparable museums, and they are much lower than the Canoe Museum. We're not saying that they should be on par with the Canoe Museum, but when people are coming into the Canoe Museum, there is this secondary opportunity to have their visit into the area, to also attend Lang over at Lang, and then bringing it up just slightly will bring it, you know, the admission fees a little bit in line with comparable museums, but also align it as a partner to the Canoe Museum. And the other opportunity here is peak season pricing for special events. Is we could generate group revenue in off seasons. If somebody wanted to have a wedding in January, there could be some small like discount, you know, for that type of, because it's the off season, but peak season pricing for special events and group events in those fall, summer seasons certainly provides an opportunity to really look at how they can diversify the special event revenue. And then again, that marketplace for the retail store. Next slide. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time here because this is also something that can happen in the current state as well in the future state, is unlocking the educational potential. Because unlike comparable museums, Lang has really sort of amplified the historical preservation and the heritage preservation. So what we did here is we wanted to actually provide a bit of a comparison to a much larger museum in Alberta, but there is a real opportunity in both the current operating model as well as a transition to a hybrid operating model, that Lang Pioneer Village Museum becomes a hub for historical education and conservation excellence. Lang Pioneer Village Museum has a tremendous amount more of curated artifacts, and especially with their partnerships in Indigenous historical education, there's just this opportunity here. So if we were to compare, next slide, please, to the Royal Tyrrell Museum. If people aren't familiar with the Royal Tyrrell Museum, it is located in Drumheller, Alberta. But when it first started out, it was not the type of museum and educational hub it is today. So it started with a strong collection of artifacts, but was kind of primarily viewed as a tourist attraction. And then they decided to have a strategic shift to education and research. And so their success came from shifting its core focus to global research, educational programming, which attract not just visitors now, but actual researchers, educations, and students from the international education body. And so it allowed them to really take an extra strategic step on revenue diversification, because they were able to capitalize on their curatorial experience and actual collaborate with a lot of different post-secondary institutions. And this is something that Lang Pioneer Village Museum is already positioned to do. It's just an untapped opportunity. Next slide, please. This just sort of speaks a little bit about today's current operating and how Lang Pioneer Village Museum can apply this model. They have a strong curatorial and conservation practice in place. If they were to elevate that, this really can, move them from just the attraction it is, and really, as I said earlier, become that hub for education and conservation practices and workshops, becoming that research hub, being able to expand their current workshops into specialized workshops and educational partnerships with a lot of post-secondaries, and being able to expand Indigenous programming beyond the Audubon camp. In our engagement and interviews with the Indigenous partners, this was something that they felt was an opportunity that should be capitalized on. And then a very large strategic opportunity, this would be something more into the future, is being able to take these specialized workshops and these conservation practices digitally for people to access, and also have some online learning. Next slide, please. So the current curator and conservator operation, again, this just sort of summarizes is that if they were to capitalize on this, it does open in the current state some eligibility for some academic research grants and funding. However, if Lang Pioneer Village Museum was to change their operating model a slight bit to a hybrid, this then also increases the amount of academic research grants and fundings that they would be eligible for. It also expands corporate and post-secondary partnerships. It allows, the ability for further revenue diversification by being able to offer paid educational programs and certificate courses as it pertains to conservator and curator operations. And this helps to future-proof Lang Pioneer Village Museum, not just with its relevance, but, taking that broader recognition of really having that historical educational presence and elevating Lang Pioneer Village Museum's role in Ontario's history, as well as the Indigenous history that exists as well. Next slide, please. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the governance in the current state operating model. Next slide. So currently, the advisory committee is just that. It's an advisory body, but it is made up of seasoned experts that are there to support museum leadership and staff. The primary function has largely been to oversee and receive some operational updates rather than actually leveraging the expertise of some of its members. So there is an opportunity there where the advisory committee, based on their expertise that sits around that advisory committee table, to play a more meaningful role in governance and strategic planning in that long-term museum development. Next slide, please. So some opportunities in the current state for enhanced governance these are just some actionable recommendations that can be embraced in the current state, where they can shift to playing more a strategic advisory role without overstepping the boundaries and the purpose of the advisory committee. So reframing meeting structures, making sure that the meeting structures aren't just to have operational updates, but that there is the part of each meeting is to dedicate to strategic review, focusing on the long-term sustainability and goals and challenges instead of just the daily updates. defining some clear boundaries, just having some updated, elevated guiding principles, and make sure that they have the ability to make recommendations in a way that supports Lang's management and staff's decision-making process. And being able to create some focused working groups, having some subcommittees on specific strategies that they can see, that they can tackle on, whether that's the current opportunity that exists to expand into more educational opportunities. This is where they can still, in their current state, have these subcommittees be a little bit more focused. And next slide, please. And just to finish this page off, it does actually allow them to have some training and workshop sessions on governance for strategic planning. It helps everyone on the advisory committee as well as Lang staff understand and support the advisory role. And then it also just really sort of embraces, that engagement and open structured dialogue between the advisory committee as well as management staff at walking together on this journey for long-term sustainability and strategic planning. Next slide, please. So this is where we wanted to talk a little bit about our recommendation about the hybrid operating model. The hybrid operating model is where the Lang Pioneer Village Museum remains as a county-owned asset, but it actually then can be established as its own not-for-profit organization, which creates a lot of cost savings, revenue generation, strategic planning, and governance opportunities. Next slide, please. So right now, Peterborough, in the hybrid operating model, the county would still maintain ownership, as I just mentioned, but operations would shift to an actual established not-for-profit foundation. This hybrid model enhances the financial sustainability, reduces the financial burden from the county. It creates a lot more operational flexibility, as well as an substantial increase in funding potential. But it still continues to preserve the public oversight of the county, as well as the museum's historical integrity. And it is also about the community. There is a lot of passion throughout the community about seeing not just Lang Pioneer Museum be sustainable in the future, but to see it thrive, to see it grow. There's a lot of personal, the volunteer groups, were very much in their commentary, they were very, very engaged at seeing this thrive. So this also, moving to this model, protects the community desire to see the museum be sustainable and thrive. Next slide, please. So as I said, in the hybrid operating model, it does lower the risk mitigation for long-term sustainability. It also creates cost savings because in the current operating state, with the amount of buildings, both historical, new, it would be a need to create an asset management type of plan specific, like a reserve plan specific to Lang Pioneer Museum, but moving to this hybrid model would eliminate that. It just also allows for a stronger operational accountability as it pertains to some more strategic planning and more strategic operations, but it really does elevate the community relations as well. The key thing here is the expanded revenue opportunities and the improved governance and strategic oversight. And I think that brings us to the end of the summarized presentation. So I don't know if anybody had the opportunity to go through the full report. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to do my best to answer them.
And I see questions already. Thank you for that wholesome report. And I'm going to ask Sheridan to speak first, and then we'll go to our deputy warden.
Thank you, Warden. I just wanted to advise council that this did go to Lang Advisory Committee. We did a presentation to the committee last week or the week before, and I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it was supported wholeheartedly by the committee, and there's a strong passion to move forward with the advisory committee being involved in what that process of a hybrid solution might look like. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. And Deputy Warden Sennis.
Thank you through you, Warden. If would going to a not-for-profit give the opportunity for them to apply for grants where now they can't?
Yes, absolutely. There are some additional grants that we identify that are in its current operating model that they are eligible for. But if they move to this hybrid model, the expanded opportunities, it's almost times 3. So, and then again, having that dedicated position based on partnerships and funding allows somebody to really focus in on that. So there aren't those missed opportunities.
Thank you. And Councillor Armstrong.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation, and I think this is a very well done study as far as it goes. I'm probably out of line, but the question that occurred to me is why aren't we, or have we raised the question of should the county be in this business at all of owning and operating a museum? We're not statutorily required to do it. It's a service that we do provide. I'm not against it, but I'm just asking the question, you know, should we be taking a hard look at whether this is a business we want to be in? And I understand it's probably only $1 million in direct costs, more in indirect, but at the same time, it's an asset that could have other purposes or uses. So I'm sure it was not in the scope of your project, Kelly, to actually look at that. So I think it's a question more for staff than for the consultant. Thank you.
I will ask our CAO to respond.
Thank you, and through you. So no, we did not ask the consultant to explore that possibility, as we haven't had direction from council to explore that. It was established as a project of County Council in 1967 as Lang Pioneer Village Museum to create that facility. And we have had commitment of council to continue on, though we do know that it's been a challenge. It's been challenging within the operational budget to continue the way we are. That's why we initiated the service delivery review, to try to find opportunities to decrease the reliance on the county budget. And so that would be the intent as we move forward to try to secure other funding opportunities, private foundations. It would make us eligible for Trillium funding, which we are not now. So there's a lot of different opportunities for funding that we would leverage, as well as revenue generation, to try to lessen the reliance on county council moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I see Councillor Black, and just a comment, you know, this was a centennial project and is seen as a jewel of the county. But certainly the cost is always foremost when we're doing our budgets. But as our CAO has said, with Trillium grants and other opportunities, this was named, I believe, 2 years ago as the best small museum in all of Ontario. So I think we have to be cognizant of that and the expectations of our residents too. So Councillor Black and then Councillor Amiot.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. Thanks for the report. You know, I think the governance change will open up opportunities for grants and so on. So I think that doesn't diminish the county's ability to make changes for the property, that sort of thing, moving forward as well. So I think that's a good recommendation. You know, Lang is a jewel, as the warden has said, to the county, and some of my fondest memories growing up were going to Upper Canada Village. And I look forward to the family trip to Upper Canada Village every year. And the main reason was because they had baked bread and fresh cheese and butter, that you had a picnic area you could go to with your family, and you'd be cutting the fresh bread. It was an event. You know, it was a destination. It was a recurring destination for us because there was something that brought us back, which for most of us is food and drink. So, you know, one of the challenges, of course, with having a small museum property like this is the cost of operations, and I think we're all aware of the commitment from the county to support it. So with respect to other revenue generating ideas, again, for myself to generate that income, you have to have local residents coming to it on a regular basis several times a year. And how you do that is offer food and drink or a place to sit down, enjoy the weather, maybe have, the kids run through the, and have a look at the buildings on. So our museums and operations of this size, do they typically look to bring in a private operator to maybe offer it like a craft brewer or something? We've seen several craft brewers take over, in farm properties, they're growing vineyards, and they're also offering pizza and places to sit down. That's what attracts people to come on a regular basis, is to come for dinner, that sort of thing with their family, a cafe or something like that. So a museum of this size and this type, is that, have you see that typically out there, that as a revenue generation or way to bring people to the destination more often? Do you see that as an option for this property?
It definitely could. It's a better option under the hybrid model, because there would be a lot more strategic governance and oversight of that. We didn't spend a lot of time on food and beverage, but what we did determine is, yes, there are opportunities for local partnerships, whether that is those craft breweries, whether that is taking what we've already recommended from that retail marketplace into something more expanded, or even for the larger special events that are there, is actually entering into partnerships with certified local food trucks. I've seen some other ones, and we work across Canada, and we've seen some other ones who have actually entered into contracts with 2 or 3, based on, this size of Lang, certified food trucks, and actually they've created a bit of a destination around that. Because then again, too, you're not getting into food safety, nutrition, you're dealing with an expert, and that's where that strategic partnership would come into play, so that it doesn't impact your current operations or those rules and regulations and legislation you would need to adhere to.
Follow up to you, Your Worship. Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting by any means that we get in the food beverage business. That's not our by any means, but I got to think that there would be operators out there that would have the opportunity to have the numbers of people that are already coming to Lang sit down and buy a sandwich or something like that, as even a seasonal operation to begin with, and maybe something more long-term down the road. So thank you for your response.
Going to ask Sheridan to speak, and then to Councillor Amiot.
Thank you. I just wanted to augment what Kelly had mentioned, because she did touch on a lot of things. We are looking internally at our food handling costs, because we do actually do food handling at Lang now, and it is an expensive, training for staff, having the proper inspections and all of that. So we're looking at what those costs are versus partnering with local service clubs like Lions, who can use it as fundraising, but also provide food service options. Because you're right, family experiences are everywhere, and what we're seeing at local venues is the ability to attract people with food and beverage. Brings whole families for, days at a time. So it's definitely something on our radar.
Just want to say, Councillor Black, when you mentioned fresh bread, I can smell it in the butter. I'm getting hungry.
Bringing flashbacks.
Councillor Amiot.
Thank you, and through you, I am serving my second term on the Lang Advisory Board. And we did meet with Kelly back in November, got together and had a really good sort of brainstorming session with all of the members of the board, and certainly, like Sheridan said, we did see this presentation. I think it was actually last week, and we're fully supportive of it. I think one of the things, and just to touch on a bit about, we talked about costs and should we be in this business or not. As a board member, and I even mentioned it to Sheridan when we did the overall service delivery review, we talked about my role. I said, I feel like if I wasn't on this board, like it would still carry on, because it's just like an operational oversight. There's not a lot that maybe I'm necessarily contributing, but what Kelly has presented, I think, is something that, like, for me, it makes me feel really happy that, Lang can continue to go, because the way it is now, I don't think it is sustainable. And, but this opens up a world of possibility for us. And I think, I understand, the dollars and cents and looking after, the physical assets and all that stuff, but we can't forget the importance of arts and culture in our community and the historical, they're remembering our history. And as a ratepayer in the county too, I support us continuing to maintain those connections and remembering our history, but also in a way that, like I said, is sustainable, that we can continue to grow with. So I'm very pleased with this report, and I'm looking forward to working with the rest of the advisory board to implement it with the county's blessing, of course.
Thank you, Councillor Lambshead, and then Councillor Nelson.
Talk about steal my thunder, Councillor Amy. The meeting we had with the advisory committee and Kelly's group was amazing. You should have seen the enthusiasm to make a change that makes that whole place better and more easily financed. And, they want to change it to an educational hub to try and teach people how to have some historical conservancy. So it's just it's time for a change. And I think this hybrid model is the change that makes this sustainable into the future. So thank you very much for that report, Cal.
And thank you both on behalf of the county for what you bring to that table. Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Warden Clark. Not to be a Debbie Downer.
Donnie, yeah.
My question.
In that case, we'll have you muted.
My question is, if we move to a hybrid, which sounds great and wonderful, and I believe it's very helpful to bring funds for this jewel. But my question is, when we turn this over to whoever that might be, and they fail maybe at it, I'm not looking for failure, but if they fail at it, what is the oversight committee would be able to, or us as council members would be able to bring this back in-house and run it the way we have been running it? Or is it going to be like a contract with somebody, or is that going to possibly change with the oversight committee if this person is not, or whoever is running it, whoever puts in charge of running it? I guess that's my question is.
No, that's fair enough. And I'll ask our CAO under that governance model, if that was a choice, to speak to that.
Thank you. So it would be similar to what was done at Hope Mill. So Hope Mill established itself as incorporated not-for-profit, but under ownership of Orca. So we would maintain ownership. The staff would still be staff. You would have a board that would annually create a budget and a work plan and a strategic plan that would present to council as part of our budget process. And then council would approve that budget. So it would be arm's length, but it would still be very much integrated with the county. It wouldn't be handing it over to another entity to run it. We would still be part of that, but the board itself may expand, maybe a bit bigger board. We would look for certain additional skills, and that board would be responsible for the strategy, the operations, and then reporting back to county council on how that's working.
And to that point, Sheridan, we would have representation on that board. County members would still remain.
That's correct.
Thanks for the answer.
Councillor Annette, follow up.
Yeah, if I may, through you, I liken it to sort of what our library boards are now. I mean, there isn't separate legislation that would necessarily be governing Lang, but that is that arm's length. They have, the library is a municipal asset, but that board is running the show at the library, and they're doing a fantastic job, at least in North Kawartha for sure. But I think I see this as being successful. I don't think we're not doing this because we want to fail. And I think with things that have been suggested and some of the examples that are out there, because this model is already out there working very well. I think this is the right time, and we need to pursue it for sure.
Thank you. Councillor Wilford.
Just to speak to it, it's a great way of gaining funds, being non-for-profit. I think it's an excellent way to move forward with Lang Centre Village. An educational center, yes, I could see it being used as that also. I'm one step I'm looking at the next one with the museum services on it. You got to get more schools involved. And as my colleague, Councillor Black, has said, you have to have food there. If you want people there, you're going to have things to attract. And I think if you have a separate advisory board there, that they will work at that. And that's their job, is to look at creating funds for that Lang Century Village. It's a historical place. I'd hate to see anything with that going away from our county. Just a comment.
I think there's huge opportunities. I see the artisan side to highlight all our county artisans, and, you know, to have that present there would draw people as well. So I think it's great. So we do have a motion that the presentation from Kelly regarding Lang Village Museum service delivery view be received, and that staff be directed to bring a report back to council with the organizational structure and next steps to implement the recommendations therein. So mover for that. I see Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Wilfred. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, and thank you for that great overview. Very thorough, Kelly. And I certainly, I believe everyone read that, because we're all vested in that property. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And I will depart your meeting now so that you can continue.
Okay, thank you. And we'll turn it over to Lynn, and Director of Strategic Services. And Lynn, you are coming in online. There she is. Okay.
Are you able to see me okay and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Warden and members of Council. The report before you today is to provide Council with the final report and recommendations of the Lang Pioneer Village Museum Service Delivery Review. The review was completed in 4 months and focused on a plan to increase revenues, decrease operating costs, and streamline operations while ensuring operational excellence, long-term sustainability, and continued relevance. The scope of work entailed stakeholder engagement, as Kelly has already mentioned, staff meetings and surveys, research into Lang's operations, a benchmarking analysis, financial analysis, and development of a funding strategy. Included in the financial analysis was a review of the museum's admission prices, which revealed Lang's prices are lower than the comparable sites that were used for benchmarking. Lang has not increased admission fees since 2018. Therefore, staff are recommending a small increase as an immediate measure to assist in creating additional revenue, which aligns with the recommendation in Kelly's report. Applying a $2 increase effective April 1st, 2025 to all single admissions, and a $5 increase to group admissions, which includes family, guided tours, and seasons passes, will provide approximately $18,200 in additional revenue based on 2024 attendance numbers. The service delivery review contains many recommendations for changes to the museum that will have both expense and revenue financial implications. These recommendations will be analyzed more thoroughly with the Lang Pioneer Village Museum Advisory Committee, with any recommendations being brought back to Council for approval. Today's staff's recommendation is that the Lang Pioneer Village Museum Service Delivery Review be received, and that the tariff of fees for Lang's admissions be updated to be effective April 1, 2025, and that staff be directed to work with the Lang Pioneer Village Museum Advisory Committee to bring a report back to Council in the second quarter with an implementation strategy. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Any questions? It's all straightforward. We have the motion regarding the increase of the fees, and also to bring back a report in the second quarter of 2025. Moved by Councillor Webb and second by Deputy Warden Senes. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to consent items, and we have asked, Councillor Black has asked for 9A. I'm wondering if the chief would run the video for us first, and then we can entertain questions. So thank you.
Thank you. Through the warden, I would like to introduce to you a public messaging video that was completed. Sorry, it was completed in partnership with the City of Kawartha Lakes, Haliburton County, and Lindsay Communication Center. This public messaging video introduces the new medical priority dispatch system that is being implemented from the province of Ontario. And we have a go live launch date in our area of March 26. Go ahead.
Effective March 26, 2025, Peterborough County City Paramedics, City of Kawartha Lakes Paramedic Service, Haliburton County Paramedic Service, and the Lindsay Central Ambulance Communication Center are implementing a new 911 system for emergency calls called Medical Priority Dispatch System.
MPDS will help us to treat the most critically ill patients as quickly as possible. The system matches the specialized skills and equipment of paramedics with each case, and it helps to reduce the pressures of non-urgent calls on paramedic services and the emergency department.
With MPDS, lights and sirens resources are only provided for the most time-sensitive life, limb, or functions person. Low urgency incidents will be dispatched as soon as an appropriate ambulance is available. If a delay is expected on a low urgency incident, the caller will be made aware and they will be asked to call us back immediately if the person's condition changes. In addition, the caller will receive follow-up callbacks to check on the person's condition. If the person's condition changes during a follow-up call and require immediate medical attention, a paramedic will be dispatched.
This new system will help paramedic services preserve emergency medical capacity for those who need it most. It's about the right care to the right people at the right time. For non-urgent healthcare or social service needs, please visit your local county website to find alternatives to calling 911. Stay safe and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Tree Warden. Thanks for the report, and the video is great. I'm assuming it's going to be put on social media as well as maybe Checks TV during news times or something like that to let people know, or is that part of the social media plan?
Through the warden. Yes, thank you to our fabulous communications team. They worked with us, and we do have information that's posted on county website as well as our website. In addition, they have already connected with local news agencies and media to make sure that this is pushed out through whatever platforms that are available to us, as well as our social media.
Perfect, thanks. My question really has to do with the changes to the call system. There were changes made about 6 months ago that had a very positive impact on the fire department in Selwyn Township. Our call volume, which is large with our 5 stations, dropped by about 10% over the last 6 months, which is a huge cost savings and is huge for the staff that are getting called out on unnecessary calls under the previous call system. I think we have a much more satisfied a group of firefighters and probably more willing to go out on calls, knowing that the new system, has taken some of those unnecessary calls out. So will there be an impact with the new call system through paramedics? Is that going to change that in any way, in a positive or a negative way? Just so we can understand that for our fire folks.
Through the warden, that's a great question. What we did was we worked with the Ministry of Health as well as our lower tier fire chiefs, and we took the original tiered response agreements and we tried to mirror it with the new system. This new system should in fact decrease even more those unnecessary calls that they had been responding to. The current system doesn't allow for a lot in the way of triaging and ensuring that the highest priority calls are being responded to quicker and ensuring that we have like the right resources going to the right call at the right time. So essentially this system provides, I guess, more ability to triage and ensure that we're sending the right resources and we're minimizing those responses.
Follow up through the warden. Yeah, I mean, I hate to call them unnecessary calls because there are calls for help from residents, but not really in the purview of the fire department to respond to them typically. I mean, I think we do respond to some of them anyways because we know the the resident and they don't have maybe a lot of support or something like that. But we do have to manage those costs. And so I hate to call them unnecessary, but they're not really within the scope of EMS and firefighters in many cases. Thanks.
Thank you. And to that point, we're using a system that is over 3 decades old. And so having an update like this and prioritizing those that are most urgent and life-threatening makes more sense. We have limited resources. We know we have ambulances tied up at the hospital. So this certainly, I think, is a good move. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Warden. Thank you, Warden Clark. This is almost an extension of a program that former Chief Mello started, where we all recall, is your urgency an emergency? This is just an extension of that, and it's needed. It's necessary. We don't use the term the calls aren't important, but they're certainly all not at the same level of emergency. Our fire chief fully supports all parts of this. And there's, as Councillor Black has said, there's a huge benefit to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Warden. Through you, Chief, I understand, I think the direction obviously that this is going in is fantastic, but I understand that there's also some pushback currently that the video and text responses aren't necessarily going to be online for a few more years. Do you know anything, or can you speak to that at all?
Through the Warden. I think what you're referring to specifically is NG 911. I don't have the facts on NG 911. What I do know, though, is there is a functionality within the system that allows for that, but we're not. GIS is currently the lead on that. We're not working on NG 911.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I see Councillor Burt.
Thank you. Through you, Warden. Thank you very much for the report, Chief. I guess my question is, with the changes and the way things are triaged, I assume your dispatchers and those in the communication end of things will need some enhanced training, because I have a feeling that when perhaps people who call in are told that they may have to, longer waits or until people get used to the system, I would imagine there's going to be some pushback perhaps from the community. So I just wondered if you could touch on that more from the end of the dispatchers versus the paramedics. Thank you.
Through the Warden, I'll do my best in answering that question. The Ministry of Health implemented the training and has been working with dispatch centers as well as the services that will be undergoing the change to the medical priority dispatch system. This change management plan, as well as that training, has been underway for over 2 years. I just also wanted to note that this system has been utilized across services in Ontario for greater than 20 years. So this is an evidence-based model that's consistently being updated based on best practices.
That's great. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. So thank you.
All right. I see no further questions. So I'd like a motion to receive this. Councillor Black and Councillor Taylor, all in favor? So moved. And does anyone else have any consent item? That was just Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Warden. In the correspondence number 6.
Jim, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to do these consents first, and then I'm going to correspondence.
2 separate things? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sorry about that.
Okay.
So any further consent items? Then I just need a motion to receive all the off consent. Okay, just hold it. I'm getting further direction here.
Oh, I thought it was something new.
I'm trying to make it that way, apparently. What item did you want to pull?
Number 6 in the correspondence.
Okay, number 6.
And nobody has to look it up. I can go over it very quickly.
Okay.
The Ontario government is looking at standardizing designs for houses, flexible standards, community integration, and support for diverse models, including options, for modular homes, tiny homes, and so on and so forth. And the County of Glengarry is saying that we should back this and further that the townships be included in the standards and so on and so forth. So I just looking at it, I thought, boy, that's, that would save an awful lot of money to an awful lot of people if they could take in these designs and hand it to the chief building inspector. No architect, no, et cetera, et cetera. He said the one drawback would be if the person wanted to make a bunch of changes, well, if they do, they pay for it. But I just thought it was a good idea.
So
I would like to move the
support. To support, Jim,
Support.
okay, a seconder for that, and Councillor Black. I'm just going to ask Sheridan for some more information. This has kind of been going around, and some developers have submitted certainly drawings to get approved to make this a more fluid process. And before I call the vote, I'll ask Sheridan just to speak to that, but certainly the support, I think, is around the table. Sheridan.
Thank you. And through you. No, I think the motion to support is appropriate. Looking for standardization and smoothing out the process. So I think
And federally, I know that there was several people that did put drawings forward. Was that under CMHA or was that FCM? I'm trying to.
through you, there have been applications through CMHC and FCM for standardized approvals as well. So
Yeah, so this is great. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So, yes.
I'd like to pull item 20, Township of Asphodel Norwood Resolution. I'm speaking in favor of this resolution. What it is a stop sign at County Road 40 and Ridge Street where they meet, and 45 Highway at the top part. It's a safety issue as far as our council is concerned. During the busy times of year, especially in the summertime, but even right now, first thing in the morning and at nighttime, the highway can be backed up from traffic trying to go north. If you have two transports that are going back to the mine, or there's a transport place back there, if the transports cannot get around that corner because cars are blocking that intersection, it's a safety hazard. It would also stop cars from racing down Ridge Street when they see the light is red at the four corners. They'll zoom down Ridge Street, and it's a speed hazard for our residents. And we would really like the support of county council to be able to have the county put stop signs there. And I know that staff will ask for a report coming forward to you. That's fine. But I think it's just more bureaucracy. I really do. You can see the report is in there right there on 20. But I can live with it going back to staff if we deal with it next month.
Okay. So Councillor Whalen speaking to this.
I'd like to speak to that one.
Okay.
Simple request from a township, and I've got I haven't counted the pages, but there's got to be 50 or 60 page answer here for you, Pat. And all it says is do not block the intersection. Well, that's that's not going to solve your problem. It may not fit the rules and regulations, but it fits the place. I don't think we can make a motion, or maybe we can make a motion to support your report, but boy, I was amazed when I saw this answer. I can't imagine this kind of an answer for a stop sign.
I will ask Ian to speak to this, please.
Thank you, Warden. I did discuss this matter with our general manager, Doug Sakosha. He's not available today. So it's a little more complicated. This intersection actually falls within MTO's corridor. So we have to seek MTO approval to make any changes within the corridor. And Doug's advised me that generally through that process, there'll be a requirement for a traffic impact study to be undertaken by what's called a RACS. And I don't know what that stands for, but a RACS qualified traffic engineer. It's the only type of report that's accepted by MTO. We do not have a RACS certified traffic person on staff, but we do utilize consultants to do that. So there will be a cost associated with going through that process. Doug's advice is that MTO has to be technically satisfied through that traffic impact study to support any changes to the intersection. So that's why there's a request that report be brought back from council. Doug can go through that thoroughly, make council understand what the actual process is going to be and associated costs with proceeding through that process.
Okay, so then the staff report, we can make the motion that staff come back with a report after consultation with MTO, because that is required. And basically the template on how you proceed forward with MTO and the study that's required. Is that?
Through you, Warden. Yeah, I believe that's the appropriate direction. I think what Doug will do is have a conversation with MTO, confirm their requirements, and come back to council with a recommendation. And as I mentioned, a cost to move forward with the traffic impact study, just so the council's aware of the associated costs with it.
Okay, so in other words, we can't just make a motion and go ahead. We have to cross the T's and dot the I's, is what you're telling us. Okay. Oh, Councillor Martin, speaking to this, yes.
Yeah, just a comment. When I first read it too, I was kind of struggling with, because I'm familiar with the spot, and it is a little bit off Highway 7, so I didn't really think about that coming into it. But we have the same issues with our lights in town when it comes to MTO. Good luck. It's just a whole new ballgame. So, okay.
Yeah, well, hopefully this RAC, you say it's called?
It's a RACS certified. So it's essentially a designation that a traffic engineer has that is the only designation that MTO will accept as far as the traffic study being on. So we do have 2 local consultants that do have that designation, and we have utilized them for other projects that have been adjacent or within the MTO corridor. It's also quite common when we have Planning Act applications and MTO is involved, they require a RAC certified person to do the traffic study. So it's fairly common, but that's who we're going to have to go to do the required work to satisfy MTO.
And as far as the traffic study, I know personally, I always question when the timing they do it. Do we have the capability of input around the times that are a problem to tell them, you know, when you're doing the study, these are the times that we see this problem arising, that they don't go out at, you know, whatever hour when everybody's sleeping.
Yeah, through you, Warden. So we do have a lot of existing traffic information that's out there. You see the boxes that we have and the lines that go across the highway that records traffic movements. And so we have a very good set of data currently available. And generally it's that type of data that's looked at in addition to the turning radius. So like there's a number of factors. It's engineering, right? So there's a number of black and white factors that are looked at when they undertake this analysis. And of course, it falls back to an MTO regulated sort of prescribed process that we have to follow.
Okay. Norwood Fair would be an ideal time.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Wilford.
Just a further comment through you, Madam Ward. There was a traffic study done when the new subdivision was built up there. There's over 500 or 600 homes there. So that traffic has increased that.
Yeah.
And the traffic study was done. I know what you're saying, MTO. I have a real problem with that though, because we'll find out next year if we can have a stop sign. So if somebody's killed there in the meantime or a bad accident, you've been forewarned.
So just a follow up to that, would that traffic study that Councillor Wilford is speaking, could that be utilized but that wouldn't have the certification of the person?
Yeah, through you, Warden. Again, I'm not an engineer. I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah.
The traffic study that was undertaken was specific to that development. So it only looked at the addition of the traffic movements that would be added to the flow of the road, right? So it looks at the number of lots that are created and how many traffic movements come in and out of that development. I think because we're looking on a grander scale, We're looking at overall movements through the entire intersection. I believe, so it is probably going to be used as background information to help that study, but I'm pretty sure MTO will require a full
Yes,
study on it.
okay. Well, you're kind of caught too, the same as we
Yeah.
are. Counselor Amy. Oh, who was first here? I don't see a green light though. Counselor Taylor? Okay, thank you. There
Thank you,
go.
Warden
Looking
Clark.
for the green.
Look for the green. Ian, understanding that when staff bring a report back, it doesn't end the process and we can make a decision. I understand that. What's a realistic time frame to ask staff to bring this report back to council?
Through Warden, I think Doug will be back in the office next week. And so we can make this a priority for him to investigate this and bring a report back as soon as possible. So if not on the next council agenda, I would think the one after.
So we're talking the first meeting in April.
Correct.
Thank you.
And Sheridan, if you'll speak, and then I'll go to Counselor Amy.
Through you, and thank you. I'd also like staff to consider alternate and temporary solutions in the report when they bring it back.
Okay, Counselor Amy.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, just maybe a comment, maybe directly to the township, because I've had a lot of dealings with the MTO over the years and I can tell you that. So, and some of the challenges around, like they say they do best practices and stuff. And then my response is back, it's like, yes, best practice, but there's also wise practice and understanding what the reality of the situation is. And maybe as a municipality writing directly to the minister themselves to say like the situation. I just know we went through this with the school bus stop sign on Highway 28 and it was just ridiculous because we were having serious issues and they were like, no, it doesn't meet the criteria. Until finally we elevated it to the minister and they said, okay, we looked at all of that and yeah, we're actually going to put a sign there for you. So just maybe just to highlight the red tape and the bureaucracy of just trying to get a stop sign.
So a couple of lanes to use here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, all right. Counselor Wilford, would you like to make the motion for staff and
Bring a report back in 2 months' time. To proceed with the
1 month? Soon as possible. Soon as possible.
soon as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make a motion to staff to bring back a report on a stop sign on County Road 40 as soon as possible, please.
Okay, and seconder for that, Counselor Burt, all in favor? Thank you. Now, under correspondence, I would like item 4 pulled. It's quite a package from the EOWC, the correspondence, and that we send that out to all of our local lower tiers requesting that they put it on the agenda just so when businesses are looking and residents, they can see what is happening in Eastern Ontario around the advocating for this tariffs that have been put on. So could I have thank you. Yeah, Councillor Wellen, Councillor Webb, all in favor? Thank you. Now, I need a motion to receive the remaining correspondence. Okay, a motion for that, please. Councillor Lambshead and Councillor Nelson, all in favor? Thank you. And have we consent items as well? Okay, and a motion for that. And I see Councillor Amiot and Councillor Martin, all in favor. Thank you. Okay, now we're moving to staff reports. Excuse me. And Sheridan, please, 10A.
Thank you, Warden. The report and the tariff implications and recommended action plan were included in the agenda. I'm recommending a slight change to the motion because at the time of writing the report, it was if the proposed tariffs were put in place. And so the recommendation would be that as the penalty tariffs are now in place, that we proceed with the response action plan. And that I'm also further suggesting that a letter be sent to federal and provincial governments requesting that a stay local tax credit, similar to what was done in COVID, be implemented in 2025 to support Canadian tourism in Canada. And I know that was a very successful tax credit, and I think it's something that we can really leverage to keep people in Canada. I have touched on, the background is, I'm sure everybody's intimately aware of what's been happening with respect to the tariffs and then now the counter tariffs imposed by Canada. We have worked a lot internally with our staff. I do suggest that a report will be coming back to County Council with respect to our procurement policy and amendments to that. And I know Jen and her team are working on that, and we will get it in front of you as soon as possible to consider amending to include county value statements regarding local benefit as opposed to local preference. And then we are working on right now a doing business with the county session. So that will be hosted with economic development and our purchasing team to work with other local government entities to have basically a bit of a reverse trade show with our contractors and providers and suppliers to understand how to bid on and how to work with local government and local public entities to supply goods and services. And I think that will really help that process that came out of a discussion with a local business that I actually met with this week again, understanding how the tariffs were affecting them and how they felt they needed some help in understanding how to work with local government. We have already implemented in our procurement specifications to allow for or equivalent. So where we might have an engineer or an architect that is specifying a specific item that might be made in the US, we will consider alternatives that are proposed by vendors to allow for alternatives. In terms of economic development recommendations, there are a lot, but we will be working on a campaign with the warden, as well as with our local chambers of commerce and the EOWC, EOMC, and EOLC, Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, Eastern Ontario Mayor's Caucus, and the Eastern Ontario Leadership Council and the work that they are doing. We did attend yesterday a tariff session that was jointly hosted by the Chamber and Community Futures. It's a really excellent session and some great ideas stemmed out of that. So this document will be a fluid document. It will be changing based on what changes we see in the environment as we move forward. If the province or feds make changes to other trade agreements that currently limit us, we will again respond to that. So just looking for council support for staff to move forward with these activities, and we will be reporting back to the council on the status of them as we move forward. And one of the other things we will be doing is also tracking our direct costs related to both these campaigns, but also what we anticipate are increased costs in some areas. So one of the things we did here was that the Paramedic Chiefs of Canada is working on emergency vehicles. And I know this is probably very timely with your fire departments as well, but they're anticipating an increase in vehicles coming on the emergency side up to and including 40 to 60% increases. And so they are lobbying for an exemption on the tariffs for that. And so that I think that's something that we will be getting behind at the OWC level as well. So I think we'll continue to update you as we move through this.
Thank you, Sheridan. And certainly at our own council meeting, Councillor Taylor and myself, our chief, certainly of our fire service, mentioned we have ordered certainly some new trucks, but the existing trucks that we have ordered would now be coming in at well over $1 million with this on. So it is a huge jump and concern. And we've been doing a lot of roundtables, meetings, and what we're hearing is it's the uncertainty and the unknown that our businesses have. So it's very anxious time for them. So anyway, yeah, Deputy Warden Senes.
Thank you, through you. Thank you for the excellent report and the very quick action that you're taking with regards to this. I would be happy to move the recommendation.
Okay, I've just got a couple more. I will hold that thought. And Councillor Watson and then Councillor Whalen.
Thank you, Warden. I do support the activities that are identified in the report, and Sheridan, thank you to you and the team for putting something together. I do, when we're looking at doing business with local government and creating those types of sessions, and also as it relates to our purchasing policy, I would encourage you to perhaps look at the RFP bids and tenders process that we currently use. I know some municipalities have the ability to through their bids and tenders membership to absorb the fees that a proponent would submit versus, a local business paying an annual membership to bids and tenders or upwards of, $400 to $800 to submit a single bid can make those, make it a risky investment for a smaller business to absorb. So just some feedback for consideration if there's something that the county can do to reduce that barrier for people to be able to submit proposals.
Thank you. Councillor Whalen?
Thank you very much, and kudos. Oh boy, this is great. You certainly timed this well, Aaron. But it's just a very small thing, but identify key procurement categories and alternatives from Canadian suppliers. That should read or another country or something, because coming down this morning, I drove back our works garage and there's all these great big trucks in there and front end motors and everything else. And where'd they all come from? South of the border. We should be looking at Volvos. We should be looking at Kubotas. We should be looking at anything. And if we have orders in now, I think they should be canceled and really punctuate it that, hey, we ain't buying from you. Hey, you want to do this to us, we're not buying from you, period. And it may delay the delivery on a truck or two or something, but God, this guy's gone right off the rails. So this is apropos, so great to read and everything. And but we have to expand more than just Canada because we won't be able to do it. We won't be able to have the impact of it.
Thank you. Councillor Black.
Yeah, through your worship. So yeah, I got to echo Councillor Whalen's comments around that. I had the pleasure of being at the meeting yesterday, and the warden spoke very well on the topic as the chair of EOWC as well at the event yesterday morning. And it was apparent by a number of the questions that we've relied too much on the US for procurement. It's been easy. It's the easiest way to get there. But, Mexico's part of the free trade agreement too. And there was a gentleman there that talked about the lack of business we do with even Mexico at this point. So the biggest takeaway from yesterday was we do need to understand what is available in Canada, and the registry that you're suggesting here, getting products that every company in the county makes on a registry of somehow. So if you're looking for, I think it was the lard that the butter tart
Yes.
Lady was looking for, had to buy it through the States. Surely there's somebody making that in Canada somewhere. I don't know, but great report. I think the county's really being seen as a leader in the area on this topic. So congratulations on a great report, and looking forward to the outcomes.
Thank you. All right, then a motion, it's in our package of support here and stay local. So
With the amendment to.
with the
add
amend
other-
to,
Yeah. Other countries.
okay, that's added. Yes. Okay, very good. So moved by Deputy Warden and second by Councillor Watson. All in favor? Thank you. And now we'll ask Carrie to come to the podium, and I'll ask Sheridan, well, after the presentation, then Sheridan, I'll ask you to speak to it. Okay, thank you. Yes, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Warden. I've asked Carrie to bring forward another report because at the last meeting, we received the report, and receiving the report did not give direction to staff in terms of next steps. So we tried to put into this report the direct options and what those impacts would be, so that we could at least get some type of direction from council. Thank you.
Hey, good morning. I'm back again today. Seeking direction on moving forward with one of the options that have been presented on the non-eligible sources blue box collection. So the non-eligible sources, I think we're all familiar with what they are now, but they're essentially any non-residential recycling. So in the county, this is the small businesses, it's the municipal facilities, it's the campgrounds and trailer parks that typically make up our number of properties that are participating in this program right now. And starting in 2026, based on what the producers and the legislation states, is we won't be able to continue to collect that material in the same trucks as the residential material. If we decide to continue collecting, it will have to be on a separate truck on a separate route that only we are operating, not in partner with the producers like we're doing right now. So the reason we're back today is that a decision on this matter will be very helpful to staff as soon as possible, so we can make arrangements for January 1st, 2026, no matter what the decision is. If we decide to continue, we would need to work with the townships on their preferences for their depot sites. So that will take some time. We'll have to go out through the procurement process. We'll have to make arrangements with the contractor, and we'll have to ensure they have collection vehicles and processing capacity ready by 2026. So delaying the decision could mean increased costs as contractors bid on similar contracts with other municipalities, or possible delays in contract startup. As we just noted, there may be even additional complications now with the tariffs in place if a vehicle is needed to be purchased. And so if we decide to stop collecting, staff also need time to notify the non-eligible source properties so they can make other arrangements if they wish to, and they have ample time to understand what changes are coming for them. So by making a decision today, this will allow us to be in the best position moving forward to plan our next steps and assure a positive financial outcome. And so I'm going to ask Marissa to please pull up the table in my report, and I'll just go through each option once more. So the first option in the table is to continue the curbside and depot collection. And so in this option, we would go out for procurement with a contractor to collect the blue box material curbside at the non-eligible source properties on a dedicated route. And we would work with townships to add any depot sites that would want to be part of this contract. And so we're saying this does not have a service level impact. The only change could potentially be a different collection day than the properties are used to, because it will be on a dedicated route. So we might not be able to maintain the existing collection day. The impacts are that it would maintain blue box diversion, which is about 165 tons of blue box material a year that these properties are, they have that we're recycling, and it would support the businesses. The estimated cost to the county to operate that contract, we're estimating to be $800,000 a year. This estimate is based on conversations we've had with our current collection contractor when asked if we were to move forward with this, what would you essentially charge us for this service if it's on a separate route? We're currently paying about $620,000 a year. So this would be an estimated impact to the 2026 budget in comparison to 2025 of an increase of about $180,000. So if we continued with that option, there's a couple of different options to tax for that service. So if all properties are contributing to those costs, it would cost each property about $27 a year. That's with residential and the non-residential property classes contributing. Currently, they're paying about $21, so it would be a $6 increase per year. If only the non-residential properties would be contributing, it would cost them about $170 per year. This is all non-residential properties, so it's about 4,700 properties. It's not just the properties that would be receiving the service, which is 550. And this would be an increase of about $149 to them. So option 2 would be to collect at depots only. This would have service level impacts. It would maintain a little bit of diversion of the blue box material from landfill, but it's likely a lot of the businesses wouldn't necessarily be able to use this option or wouldn't be willing to. It would support some businesses by at least having an option available to them. Again, based on conversations with our existing contractor and what we were paying previously for this service, we're estimating it would be about $60,000 a year. And so this would be a $560,000 $1,000 decrease on the 2026 budget because we are again currently paying $620,000 a year. And so again, we have, if all properties contributed to that cost, it would be $2 per property. If only non-residential properties contributed, it would be $13 per property. And then option 3, we could remove the service entirely. Some municipalities have decided to do this based on the situation that we are in right now. This would have landfill life impacts because it's likely this material wouldn't be diverted from landfill anymore. And it wouldn't support the businesses and place additional financial burden on them if they decided to continue recycling. They would have to hire a private contractor. So the estimated cost to the county for this option is $0. It would be a savings of $620,000 per year to the 2026 budget in comparison to 2025. And if each of these properties decided to hire a private contractor based on conversations that I've had with contractors, it could cost them about $1,000 to $3,000 a year to do that, depending on how much material they had and how often they needed a pickup. It may be challenging for some businesses throughout the county because they're so spread out and some contractors may not necessarily be able to service them. So those are the 3 options. Unfortunately, like we've been put in this situation. I would love to have a more palatable option to present to council. Unfortunately, this is just the situation we are in. So happy to take any additional questions or clarifications.
Okay, Deputy Warden Senes and then Councillor Graham.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. I'm going to do a little bit of repetition here, but I'm adding to it. So we have 3 choices here, as Carrie has mentioned. We can kick to the curb our businesses and factories, resorts, commercial farmers, campgrounds, trailer parks, nonprofits, and even download to our own municipalities and say we won't provide this service anymore, which will cost them anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 a year, resulting in multiple trucks picking up across the county, and the good chance the majority of recycling will go to the landfill. I suggest the timing couldn't be worse for small business with what is going on in the world right now. Or we can charge them the user fee of $170 a year to cover the costs, to provide the service, which will penalize the businesses that are already doing their own thing. But this would ensure that more recyclables stay out of the landfill and result in approximately 2 trucks on the road, picking up one for eligible and one for the non-eligible. Or we can continue having everyone pay, which will result in a $6 a year increase over what we are paying now. I think we should be going out for an RFP and find out what the exact cost is and then decide if we want to go forward or not. Landfills cost millions of dollars, and there is the painful exercise of finding a new site. I know we're looking to divest of offering some of our services, but we have to protect our interests. And although it is not palatable for some councillors to continue this service, the alternative for down the road is even less palatable. Pay me now or pay me later comes to mind. We should continue to lobby the province to change this to include non-eligible. First, producers should be picking up all recycling, regardless of where it's from. I look forward to the discussion of my colleagues on this to see what direction you want to go. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Graham, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Amiot.
Through you, Warden, I guess that's my cue. I'll provide the counter perspective. Yeah, I understand some of the sentiments. I don't believe this has significant implications on extending the life of the landfill whatsoever. It's already not an equally distributed service. There are some participants when it comes to the non-eligible class, and there are others that go their own way and are already privately paying for their services. So this is not an equally distributed service that's being equally adopted throughout depending on the business, depending on the proprietor, depending on the types of materials that they're providing. It's really not an across the board, evenly divided service that we're providing in the county. And I think that when you're dealing with things of that nature and things of this significant cost, and I know it's not something that, you know, it's kind of a cost that we're inheriting because of the changes, not something that we've sought out. So I fully understand that. But as we've had conversations before, we are not in a position to continuing to expand and gap fill with additional services on the levy. This is a service, as we talked about last time, it's a cost of doing business that many existing businesses are already paying to address the needs of their business. So they are not looking to the county to take this on as well. They're very happy with those existing service providers. So I really think that this is an opportunity to allow the market and those who want to accrue the service as they want it, they need to investigate it and procure and work with local businesses to get that pickup and service provision provided. So at most, I'd be interested in having the opportunity to utilize the depots for this. I think it makes sense. I think there are residents throughout all our communities where there are depots that love the depots and others that don't know they exist. So I think that by utilizing the depots throughout the county, this can also strengthen and continue the existence of those facilities for a legitimate purpose in those communities. And that'll help and be a benefit to those residents that just love going to the various depots to utilize for their trash for whatever purposes, whether it's social or otherwise. And I know all the depots are different, but I think strengthening the depots by allowing them to provide this expanded service will be the best we can do and a fiscally responsible thing to do.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Warden Clark. And I apologize, Warden and Council. I have to leave 5 minutes ago, so I've got to be quick. In our township, we have a transfer station. I understand that all townships don't, but businesses can and do bring recycling material to our transfer station for no charge. They do that now, and they'll continue to do that.
Through, yeah, I just wanted to confirm that through the warden. Starting in 2026, they won't be able to do that. You'll have to have a separate bin for the commercial material.
Which we'll do.
Yeah.
Which we'll do. I am in favor of option C. I'm in favor of just dropping this service. We don't need to be into it. It's going to save us $800,000 a year. There is no cuts that we can make to our budget that are pleasant, that we'd like, that we want to do, but we have to find some ways to save money. Councillor Hart Webb said it very well here when we were having budget discussions. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We have to find ways to save money, and none of them are going to be fun, and we're not going to like any of them. But I think this is one area we can get out of the service. We don't need to be into it, and just remove it. That's my comment on it. Sorry, got to run.
Councillor Amiel.
Thank you, through you. I'm on the same page as the deputy warden on this. And I do think my email that I had sent my comments, I think it was provided to council. So a lot of the same things, but I think to use a couple of examples, I mean, as a business owner, years ago, there were no opportunities to recycle shrink wrap. And as a small marina, we were putting 40,000 yards of clean plastic into the landfill. And then the county stepped in and said, hey, you know what, we can offer this service for you. And it was a user fee or user pay, and did that. And now there are suppliers or providers out there that will come and pick it up, right? But it was a valuable thing. It diverted so much out of the landfill. I mean, it's just as a small marina operations, I can only imagine what some of the bigger outfits must go through. And I also think, again, we're talking about the tough economic times and you know, and knowing our businesses are going to be you know, struggling with this. This is something, while I understand maybe it's not palatable to spread it all over, you know, the county residents at as all properties contribute, you know, I would even go for the non-residential properties, you know, the 170, it's a heck of a lot more economical and efficient than throwing them out to the wind. And I think the other thing we need to understand is that if businesses do have their own bins, it tends to be for waste and everything gets thrown in there. There's not a separate bin that and maybe that will come, that has just for recycling. It tends to be like if it's a contract or whatever like that, just everything gets thrown in there and it goes down to the landfill. The easiest that we can make it for people to recycle, then we got to do it. And I think, like I said, the county's done it before in offering a fee for service for that. I think it's something that we should consider doing. And I agree as well. We have a meeting with our MPP tonight. We need to hammer this home. This is ridiculous. There should be no such thing as ineligible sources. It's all recycling. The producers are making it. They need to be responsible for it. So I'm with option 1A or B.
Thank you. And to that point, we've been forced by the province to do this. So it doesn't make sense if they are into recycling to not put and carbon footprint to not have one truck pick up everything. Councillor Black. Councillor Watson and then Councillor Black. Yes, please go ahead, Heather.
Gordon, thank you. Through you. I'm afraid I'm going to argue against Councillor Amiot on this. I feel I'm quite torn. I understand the importance of diversion and, the cost itself, just fundamentally on the principle of it. This is something that the province has created as lower tier municipalities, and this group has been talking to the province about negotiating a new deal with the province in terms of how we are generating revenue and how we're funding our infrastructure. And at this critical point, I don't think it makes any sense to be picking up costs that aren't ours, because it just weakens that broader argument that municipalities don't have the affordability for the infrastructure and costs that we already do have. Now, having said that, and through you, Warden, I will ask a question. I'm not against the concept of offering the service if it is 100% a user pay system. So looking at option 1 with that $170 fee, Carrie, what does that look like from an implementation standpoint? If some businesses, I saw in one of the reports, I think it was about 4,500 businesses roughly that you had, or properties that you had flagged, will some be able to opt out? Will that change that cost? Like, how does that work on a logistics side of things?
Through the warden. So the option we are proposing is not a true user pay option. There's 550 properties that would be potentially using, but if we were to move forward with it, we would need to have flexibility in that contract to add or remove properties that they're actually stopping at to collect. Through discussions with our finance staff, their comments were that it would be extremely challenging and cumbersome to have a true user pay option because of the nature of it being so flexible and changing constantly. So they have recommended that we tax the non-residential only properties. So that is 4,700 properties that would be contributing to the service. Only 550 of them approximately would actually be receiving the service.
Okay, and so just as a point of clarification then, the goal for this though, if we were to go under that option, would be that it would have zero impact on the levy, direct, as opposed to so we're just going to the individual, no.
Through the work, this would be through the levy, but the residential property owners wouldn't be contributing to it.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Stennis, and then Councillor Grant. Thank you, through you.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that if we went the $170 route, then that 800,000 would be taken off our budget, as has been suggested, which is what people are looking for. But it would protect our landfill to a degree, because if people are paying it, they'll darn well use it. So that's my one point. The other point I want to make that hasn't been mentioned was, we haven't really clearly communicated to the non-eligible that we've been doing them a favor. We've been picking up the slack, and it's not going to be happening any longer. I think they have to clearly know that here we've been doing you a favor, but today you got to start paying your own bills. So we have to get that clearly communicated if that's the direction we go. And I'm in favor of the 170 a year as opposed to these non-eligibles. And there's a big long list of them that would have to pay $1,000 to $3,000 a year. Thank you.
I'm going to jump to Councillor Black because he hasn't had first time to speak to it. Him out of order, and then Councillor Graham. So go ahead, Councillor Black.
Thank you, through your worship. Just point of clarification, you're saying there's 4,700 businesses that and only 550 of them would use the service. Can you explain that huge difference?
Through the ordinance. So the 4,700 properties are any non-residential property in the county. So it includes more than just the commercial businesses. It's like industrial properties and things like that. But so that where that 550 number came from is last summer we had our staff go out to all of the locations in the townships to do participation study. They went out at 6 o'clock in the morning before the recycling trucks went by and counted all the businesses and spoke with businesses to determine how many were actually participating, because we didn't have a great handle on that number. Previously, we thought it was upwards of 700 properties based on conversations we had with our collection contractor. So we were actually able to save a significant amount of money on the 2025 budget by lowering that number. But that's where that 550 number comes from. It's the properties that are actually participating. If there's a business that produces a lot of recycling, like we have a limit on our program, so it's 2 commercial carts or 10 blue boxes. So the businesses that have more than that, likely they're not participating in the program. So there's that factor as well.
So a lot of these properties they're vacant properties. They're properties that don't have a building or something, and we're going to ask them to pay $170 a year more. If you just looked at the individual, the 550 that are actually using it, it's more like $1,500, and it kind of aligns with number 3 costing. It's $1,454 per each one of those. So, okay, thanks for clarifying those number of differences. You know, my interest is making sure that recyclables are getting into the landfill. I think my history here has been mentioned a few times. I got into politics because of garbage, and you know, and even, you know, the clear bags today, I'm not sure it's effective. I watch my, I'm not sure what they call them anymore. You don't call them garbage men anymore, but my refuse technician at the end of my driveway picks it out of the thing and throws it in one motion into the truck. So I'm not, you know, I think they're a good idea, but it's not really making a difference. So having more recyclables going into the landfill is my concern. And how we best address that. I'm not 100% sure how we do that just yet. I do think it's important that we get a real cost if it's 550 businesses, that we do get a real cost to make a decision around, whether that is the county picking up the bill, which I'm not 100% behind either, but trying to create a fair way to charge properties for the use of the service, and maybe it's a hybrid of the users that really use it a lot versus the ones that don't use it right now. Maybe it's some kind of a scale based on what their use is. But I also don't want a lot of unnecessarily work for staff to manage it. I think that's got to be a big part of this decision if we're going to be involved in this business. And as the deputy warden said, it's not our business anymore. We also have to make sure that it's not overly burdensome for staff to implement a plan. But I think it's important at this point to even get a price. I know you've got verbal prices and estimates, but I think if you've got some clear numbers for an RFP, we can do a non-binding RFP to get a price and then bring it back to council for a final decision on it. I know time is waning as far as making a decision. We're only in March. So, you know, I think making a decision certainly before June would certainly still give 6 months to implement any plan that we might consider by council. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Graham, then Councillor Martin.
Yeah, through you, Councillor Black did a lot of the similar map that I did, you know, with regards to the business community, I mean, you're asking the 4,700 to carry the costs that only 550 are going to be benefiting from, which isn't helping those small businesses at all. The 800,000, whether it's coming out of the residential or the commercial, is a levy implication. So that cost is going to have to be funded by the levy, and all the different components that pay into it. So again, I come back to, it seems as though in doing that math that Councillor Black alluded to, that the costing is right, that regardless of how it should be done, if those 550 were seeking a market to provide that service privately, they'd be doing it for the equivalent of what it would be costing them to receive it if they were the only ones paying into it. So, I mean, to me, that speaks more. I was coming in more in favor of option 2, but now, based on the numbers, I'm further much more leaning towards the removal altogether. I don't think there's, like I said, I unlike Councillor Black, I have seen and firsthand in regards to the years since the clear bag that there is significant reductions in influence in that. It's not earth shattering. We're not cutting 50% of our volumes or tonnages down, but it's, up in the 10s to 15% year over year that we're seeing in a reduction. So I do think that is having an impact. And I do think that was a simple adjustment that we could affect to preserve the landfill. But, this is not an equal service that the county will be providing to all the businesses. If only 550 are going to participate and we can't effectively and efficiently only charge those 550, I can't allow the other 4,200 to carry the burden for those municipalities that want a special service. And I think that, like I said, I'm open to discussion about the depots, because I think that gives, for those municipalities with them, a local option. And for those that have some charges on those fees, those municipalities could talk about waiving fees for commercial garbage to a point. But I mean, I think there's a cost associated with that the depots could provide the only option. But like I said, now I'm leaning more to option 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Just to understand this, there's so many things to these options and none of it's simple. So when we talk about the $170 per operator or whatever that doesn't have anything right now, and we're talking whether it's 4,000 or 550 or whatever it is it like an area rate though? Like, is that like, would they be charged? Because I did hear about area rate before, or something similar to an area rate, which is what we do with garbage pickup. And our village has garbage pickup. Like, is there a way of making sure that we, like you say, it's going to go away at the transfer stations? Is there a way of having it at the transfer stations, but also having an area rate? So some of the cost goes to these operators, because it is a business and they can do it, but we have to make it affordable too. I know that's what we're getting in trouble for now, is we've been so giving over the years, and now we're just trying to keep it, but it's getting harder and harder to do it. So, if they have some sort of an area rate in there that they're paying for it in the background, but it's more affordable than $3,000 a year, I'm all for it, but there has to be some sort of charges to it. So,
Councillor Whalen.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Warren. We had a big discussion about this yesterday, and our
Would you like to speak?
council said we got to do something for them. We can't just quit. And the mayor came up with this $170 that the deputy warden has come up with as well. And I think it's a fabulous thing, because we continue the service, and $170 compared to them spending $1,000 to $3,000. I don't think you're going to get any complaints. And this is the only time that we can really do it, because this is the Ontario government's fault. And we've never made that known, because we just continued the service. They haven't noticed any difference at all, but they've got to know. And they've got to know that, hey, it's going to cost you $170 a year. It's pretty cheap. And there's going to be winners and losers. No question about it, Matt. There's, people who have a lot more recycling than others, but you can't start breaking it down that fine. But if the county can levy that just to the businesses, tell them why, I'm behind it 100%. And it gets that 800,000 off our budget.
Councillor Whalen, would you like to make that motion?
I would make that motion right now. Madam
Okay.
Chairman.
Deputy Warden Senes has seconded. Yes, recorded vote, please.
Could I just have confirmation from
Yeah.
Councillor Ware? Could we have confirmation what the motion was? Just B, straight B?
Yeah.
County of Peterborough.
Straight B, Jim. I think if you look on that, it's written out, it's the B. So go up to the
So it's
schedule.
depot only collection, maintain some diversion.
No, no, it's one, it's one.
Oh, 1B, sorry. 27, if non-residential only properties contribute is 170.
$170.
Okay,
That's right.
thank you. Okay, so, okay,
Speaking to the motion, Councillor Graham.
Like part of the issue, and again, it comes back to Councilor Black's question with the motion. I'm speaking to the motion. What if it's not 800,000? What if it's not $170? Because like these numbers are just, they're in the wind, like they're not real, like they're estimates. So like, I guess the issue I have is if we're proposing
And
it,
point taken, I'm going to ask our CAO to respond to that, to that concern, Councillor Graham.
Thank you. That I would recommend the recommendation be that council supports option 1B, that staff be directed to issue the RFP and bring back a report to county council with specific costing implications.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah. Okay, so we're supporting that with the numbers coming back, Councillor Graham, for final.
so clarification that the RFP is going to be non-binding as Councilor Black alluded
Non-binding.
to.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so support of one with a non-binding RFP to confirm costs that are associated. Okay, thank you. Yes, go ahead, Deputy Warden Senes.
It's important to recognize that it would give to the non-eligible. Yeah, we might as well make the clarification now.
Yeah. Okay. Is staff clear? Okay, all right. So we will commence the vote then, please record it.
okay, Councillor Whalen
Yes.
and Councillor Huntley is absent. Councillor Lambshead,
Yes. Let's have a look.
Councillor Burt,
Yes.
Councillor Amiot,
Yes.
Councillor Black,
Yes.
Deputy Warden Senes,
Yes.
Councillor Graham,
No,
Councillor Armstrong,
Yes.
Councillor Nelson,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Wilford.
Yes.
Sorry, those were all yeses. Their microphones were not on. Okay. Councillor Webb,
No.
that was a no. Councillor Watson,
Yes.
that was a yes. And Warden Clark.
Yes.
Okay, that passes.
Right. Thank you, and thank you, Carrie, for all the reports you have come to council and reiterating the information over and over to us. So thank you. Okay, anything further, Sheridan? We're good. Okay, does anyone have a notice of motion? I see none. Announcements. So I'd just like to say that this Saturday, March the 8th, marks International Women's Day. Accelerated action is the theme. As Warden of Peterborough County, someone who's been involved in municipal politics for many years, decades, I'm proud to serve alongside incredible women in leadership, and that includes our Deputy Warden Senes, Mayor Amiot, Mayor Watson, Deputy Mayor Armstrong, and Deputy Mayor Burt, and the many women in leadership roles that we've seen. And to be part of a council of men and women, I've always, when I've sat on any council, been respected, and the decorum that we have in this council is a great reflection of the men that we serve alongside as well, and that is appreciated. We have to continue to break down barriers and support one another and ensure that future generations of women see themselves reflected in leadership roles at all levels of government. International Women's Day is about more than just recognition. It's about action and advocacy and ensuring that every woman has the opportunity to lead, contribute, and thrive. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, and may we raise them. And thank you to the men here that support us. So I'm going to also turn it over to Councillor Amiot, who is coming forward with a wonderful idea as well.
All right, well, thank you. And in honor of International Women's Day this Saturday, I've thought about this for a while, but I would like to propose a friendly challenge to the women of Peterborough County. And I'm asking you to consider joining 100 Women Peterborough. 100 Women Peterborough empowers women to make a direct positive impact on the lives of others in the Peterborough region. Supporting local causes and organizations is more important now than ever before, and this group makes it easy for women to come together and make a difference in our communities. And this is how it works. 100 women from the Peterborough region meet for 1 hour, 4 times a year, and commit to donating $100 each per meeting, totaling $10,000 for a worthy cause. Then a local charity or not-for-profit organization is chosen to receive these funds. Since 2018, 100 Women Peterborough has donated over $200,000 to local charities in our community. The current membership is actually just over 100, and I'm hoping that my friendly challenge today will see their membership grow along with the charitable contributions that they make. And I've asked staff to help with sending out an email outlining my friendly challenge and have it sent to all of the members of County Council with this information, along with a link to the website, which is 100womenptbo.ca, and along with further contact info. And if you would share it with your council, with your staff, and feel free to share it with your local communities as well. I'm hoping that maybe we'll gain so many new members that they will have to change their name to Hundreds of Women Peterborough instead. So that's my challenge. And I just, in the spirit of celebrating women, this is just breaking news. I'm sure you're all aware of the Luminary Awards that are up and coming. I did pay for my ticket, but I wanted to make an announcement. We have 2 nominees here in the council chambers for one of the awards, Barrier Buster employee. Nominees include Sheridan Graham. And the Legacy Award nominee is our warden, Bonnie Clark. So congratulations on being nominated. Yeah, don't come in. That's first. No, girl power all the way.
We'll look forward to that, Lincoln, and thank you for that. So we're going to, yes, Lori, please go ahead.
Thank you. I guess following that theme, I just want to let everyone know and invite you there on Thursday evening, which is tomorrow night at the Asphodel Elmore Community Center from 7 to 9:30. There's an event for International Women's Day organized by some local women in our township. Speakers include Carrie Dart, who is the Deputy Commissioner of the OPP, Maria McDonald, advocate, barrister, spokesperson in the field of criminal justice, Leah Denbach, who's a photographer who has raised awareness of homelessness and other issues and has been featured in Vogue, on the BBC and CBS. And Shauna, I'm not sure how that is pronounced, Wickware, who is also a member of the OPP and is part of the organization of Women Igniting Change. And Anne Elliott, who's a local resident of our township who found hope and support through the Crossroads Shelter during a difficult time in her life. The event is free and it is at the Millennium Room at the Community Center. But donations to the YWCA Crossroads Shelter and our local food bank are welcomed. So that's tomorrow night. Thank you.
And we don't need tickets, Councillor Birch. You can just
doors open at 6:30 and the event starts at 7. You don't need tickets.
Okay, thank you. And yes, Councillor. Oh, okay, nope. No issue. So today, we're going to do the Irish flag celebrating the 200th anniversary of Irish immigration here, bringing 2024 individuals here under the supervision of Peter Robinson. So we'll be doing that right after council, and thus us all wearing our green today. So thank you. And I'll ask the clerk to read the bylaws.
We have two bylaws on today's agenda. 2025-08 is to establish the tax policy and levy property taxes for 2025. That was approved by council at the last meeting. And bylaw 2025-09 is to appoint the area weed inspectors for the county.
Okay, could I have a motion for those, please? Councillor Martin and Councillor Amiot, all in favor? Thank you. Confirming bylaw. And Councillor Nelson and Councillor Whalen, all in favor? Thank you. And adjournment.